Good morning, Rabotai. Welcome to breakfast in the class. Good morning, Rabotai. Welcome to breakfast in the class. Breakfast in the class today is dedicated in loving memory Nishmat Meir ben Rabbi Yehuda v'Rachel Purest, sponsored by Avidan. Also, the learning for this week is dedicated by the Torah Center Diamond donors Tatiana and Sonny Doer, in loving memory and Nishmat Sonny's father Eli Doer, Eliyahu ben Sion Faride. Breakfast in the class is also dedicated in loving memory of Amos Megidish, Leinu Nishmat Amos ben Misa, Alav Hashalom, sponsored by his daughter Tamar Megidish. Dedicated for the speeding of Refuah Shlema for Eliyahu Shimon Mazav Fortuné and Chana Batzim Mafega, and as well sponsored by David E. Ash in honor of you and your substantial capacity to good today and every day. We also would like to thank and wish hearty Mazal Tov and Mabruk to the Hafif and Yakoel families on their beautiful marriage of their children a couple nights ago. Very, very special. Mazal Tov, congratulations. You should be zochet to build Beit Ne'eman B'Yisrael. And of course, also, we'd like to wish a beautiful Mabruk and Mazal Tov to Daniel and Esther Dishi on the birth of a brand new baby girl. Mazal Tov, Mazal Tov, Mazal Tov. Congratulations to the Dishi and to the Dua families on such a magnificent addition to our community. I'm sure she will one day be a leader and a pillar in the community like her parents and her grandparents are. My friends, let us begin. The Pasuk tells us something very interesting. It tells us in the beginning of the parasha about the lighting of the menorah. And it tells us that you should have, for this menorah, Shemen Zayit Zach, an oil that comes from an olive, which is Zach, which is pure, Katit Lamaor, which means that it was pressed only for the sake of lighting the menorah. Now there's a purity here that needs to be understood. What are we referring to when we say that this oil needs to be pure, pressed for the menorah? Rashi tells us on the spot that when they take the olive down off of the olive tree, they would press the olive, but initially not in an olive press, right? In order to avoid any shmarim, any pieces or sediment from the olive getting into the pristine oil. So first they would take this olive and they would press it b'machteshet. Machteshet means like a squeezer almost, okay? So it's not the same violence of squish as the olive press is. It's a much more delicate press, and therefore what you'd get out of that first squeeze is the purest olive oil that you could get. After that, they would take the olive and they would put that olive into the olive press, and the oil that would come out of that was the secondary oil. The first oil could be used for the menorah only. The second oil could be used for menachot, for the offerings that would be brought that required shemen zayit to be brought with them. So one more time, katzach and katit lamaor means that which was pressed specifically for the candles. And the purpose of that in this more refined press was in order to make sure that there was an extra level of purity to the oil that was used for the menorah. The secondary oil, which might be a little bit less pure, but still very pure, is used for the menachot. Lying in this condition, in this idea, is a tremendous lesson that sits inside of this beautiful teaching. You know, our rabbis tell us that the idea of the menorah is something which is counterintuitive. In fact, the Talmud tells us that the windows of the Beit HaMikdash were actually built in a way which will counter to what you'd imagine. If you're trying to gather light from the outside, you'd have windows that were widest at their outer point where they could receive the sunlight, and then tapered in, to the inside of the Beit HaMikdash. But the Beit HaMikdash's windows were exactly the opposite. They were narrow on the outside and wide on the inside. And why is that? Because it's meant to teach you a very powerful idea that the light for this world, it commences from the Beit HaMikdash, and then goes to the rest of the world, as opposed to the other way around. It doesn't need your light in here. You need its light. We've expressed many times throughout the journey of Tirumah that the lesson of the Beit HaMikdash is one which doesn't end in the Beit HaMikdash. It goes far, far beyond the Beit HaMikdash, and it is meant to be able to teach us, first and foremost, how to build a sanctuary for God in our day-to-day world, but secondly, how to construct the human body. Not like someone who's a hippie out of whatever, some mountaintop, telling you that their body is a temple, but that their body, that your body, is a temple. You're not only worried about whether or not you're eating kale and alfalfa sprouts. You care about what you're ingesting in terms of what you see, who you surround yourself with, who you talk to, whose ideas you onboard, etc., and so on and so forth. So therefore, when we look at this, we understand the human being's capacity and propensity to be able to receive a HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence. And if that is the case, then the windows to our soul need to mimic, the windows to our temple need to mimic the windows of that temple. Our eyes need to be narrow on the outside and wider on the inside. And I want to talk a little bit about what this light that a person has to bring to the world actually is. My friends, you learn a lot of lessons in a lot of places, but sometimes you hear things that you never would have thought you'd hear in a place where you never thought you'd hear them. It was on a basketball court this Saturday night, having a conversation with the man in the mask. The Caped Crusader himself was playing ball with us on Saturday night, and I heard him tell about how he took the classes and figured out a way of using them as a connection point and a conversation point in a relationship. And I thought to myself, what an unbelievable expression of light emanating from a person to the outside as opposed to from the outside in. And allow me for a second to talk about what this means. You know, a lot of people, you know, in a certain segment of society, you'll go to you go on a date, you might go have a drink somewhere, you know, in a hotel lobby if you're very religious. You'll sit outside and talk for however long. You might go if you're maybe of a regular, normal, if you call yourself a normal background, depending on where you come from, that defines what you call normal, right? You might decide you go out to eat for a date. Somebody might decide they're going to go to the movies for a date. The worst of those three is to go to the movies for lots of reasons. But there is no connection there. Everything that you're experiencing is manufactured. It's outside in. So people will tell me, yes, what am I doing? I ask, what are you doing? You want to see this young woman? We're going to go see a movie. I was like, that to me is the dumbest thing ever. You're getting to know her not at all. You're taking her to a place where if any of you speak, you're being shushed. Probably more than in a shul, I don't know. I have never been into a movie theater in my entire life. So I don't know what goes on there. But my friends, I'd imagine that it's not conducive to getting to know somebody. But think about this idea, about what this young couple is trying to figure out, how they're getting to know one another. It's so special. That's a light that comes from inside. The most important thing is not to figure out what you take from the outside world, but it's to figure out what your heart, what your neshama is saying about the outside world. Now, let me share something. Everybody in this world knows that Fox News is a right-wing news channel, okay? They're probably the only right-wing news channel on a national level. There's some others that have tried to kind of rise to that occasion. Everybody knows that CNN is a left-wing news channel, perhaps less so now that it's falling apart and there is no more left-wing. But the point, my friends, is that there are two channels. Now, imagine for a second if you saw an article put out by CNN or a news story about CNN. Terrible how this Israeli person who murdered an innocent Palestinian who was trying to stab him repeatedly with a knife. You know, I don't know how he didn't think of the Palestinian's poor family while he was stabbing him, you know, and he killed him. I don't know why he didn't think of that. I imagine if you saw an article like that, you would take it with a grain of salt. Right? Is that fair enough? You'd probably see, okay, you know, oh, that's why I'm on CNN's website. hold on, let me check what really happened on some other website. Could you imagine thinking that for a minute? Or vice versa. If you're a left-wing guy and you saw something in the news that was on a right-wing station, what would you do? You'd say, oh, okay, that's Tucker Carlson saying that. Maybe I need to go check it, by someone who thinks like me. I want you to think for 1 second. All news, all media is being given to you pre-spun. All media, right? Whoever's telling you the story is telling you the story through their perspective. Now, if you're a right-wing political spectrum person, you're going to translate events in your eyes. If you're a left-wing political person, you're going to translate events through your eyes. My friends, that's right-wing and left-wing political agendas. I'd like to ask you, what is your perspective on the world news? What is your spin? What is your agenda? Now, the word agenda is always, we always try and taint that word with negative connotations. Oh, this person, they have an agenda. I'll try to figure out what's his agenda. Guy comes to you, wants to do a deal in business. I don't know what's his agenda. His agenda is to make money. That is his agenda. And I hear this from people all the time. They're like, Rabbi, I don't know. I don't know if I want to get involved with this guy. His agenda, he comes into the deal. He just wants to make money. I'm like, he's at work. Let me ask you, what is your agenda in doing this deal? Having conversations and coffee? That's why you sold real estate, so you could meet someone for coffee? It's a lot easier to meet someone for coffee without that. You also have an agenda. Everybody has an agenda. And by the way, agendas are not bad. It just depends what they are. Katit Lama'or is asking us for a very simple thing. Every person is bringing light into the world. Every person. Right? They're bringing their experience, their knowledge, their passion out into the world. Maybe in conversations with people, maybe to your friends, maybe to your community. But my friends, hold on. How much more so if you are having a family and you are raising children? Do you have an agenda? You better. Because I can promise you one thing. If you don't have a direction in which you want your children, family, community to be raised, you know what will happen in the absence of your agenda speaking? Someone else's agenda is going to speak. And if that's the case, you might not wind up very happy with how things turn out. My friends, it was only yesterday that in broad daylight, 3 gunmen walked into a Gucci store, and in New York City, in this town, in the middle of the day, 3 people walked into a store with guns drawn, had everyone get on the floor, stole whatever they wanted from the Gucci store, and then walked out. Now, I'm not a Gucci guy, It's not like I care about what happened in Gucci, because I only wear Gucci. I don't own a single thing, as far as I'm aware, that was designed by the house of Gucci. Okay? Bet Pachachu, for those of us who remember that one. I have no affiliation and no connection. You know what's interesting to me? What's interesting to me is how every time the left finds any story to do with guns that they don't like, everyone is yelling and screaming about gun laws and how we have to do this and where is the justice and we need to do this and we need to do that and we need to do the other thing. My friends, 3 people were held up in broad daylight. You know what you didn't hear one word of? We need to make sure that laws are instituted in this city, that criminals go get put behind bars, that there are more police on the streets, that if criminals have guns and have the audacity to walk in, that policemen have the handcuffs taken off of their arms. In this city, handcuffs are for police, not criminals. My friends, if you are not coming with your agenda to the city, you know what happens? Another group with louder voices comes and takes over City Hall. Ladies, gentlemen, I don't make political points, ever. If you ever hear me making a political point, understand, I am making a Torah point. A society that has no law and order. A society that wants you to believe in every narishkeit, every stupid thing that it could come up with. That is not political for me at all. The idea that you could force people to drop their religion, or, and that's okay. And only things that they care about are shoved down everybody's throat and legislated. That if you make a comment about a certain group of people, you will lose every job in the city. You will lose. You'll be tried for hate crime. But if it's against a Jewish person, then what will the news tell you? The NYPD, the Chicago PD, the whatever PD, has determined that there's no evidence that it's a hate crime. They're only punching yoelis. What's going on? My friends, we talk about these things because they are a microcosm in your family, in the macrocosm on the street. Your children are being bombarded all the time with another agenda. Where is your airtime? Where is your chance to speak up? Our communities are being told all the time what they have to think, what they have to feel, what education has to come to the schools. Where is our airtime? When it comes to light, the light of the menorah especially, our Chachamim explained to us that refers to the light of Torah, to the ideas of Torah Judaism. That's what the menorah is. Understand that even the holy sacrifices, the menachot, so holy, their oil is not pure enough for the menorah. When it comes to education, we require a level of purity that has no sediment in it whatsoever. It requires an entirely different pressing process. Our children, our communities need to be able to have an education that has nothing mixed into it whatsoever. And you know what sediment is to oil? Something other than oil. Now to me, that sounds pretty good. You go get yourself a fresh cup of orange juice. 100% of the time, if they're freshly squeezing you orange juice, you know what you're getting? Pulp. You ever complain about pulp in your orange juice when you get a fresh squeezed cup of orange? No, of course not. Why not? Min bimino. This is the same as this. This is what this comes from. The olive that's in the tiny sediment of pisa, if it's a pit, fine. But the tiny sediment of olive that's in the shemen zayit, it's the same thing. And the answer is, it's enough the same thing. They're enough the same thing for menachot. But holier even than the sacrifices is the light of Torah, is the light that we shine to our children. My friends, where are you getting airtime with your children? Now, a lot of people will do a lot of wonderful things for their kids. They'll take their kids to great adventures. Amazing. And not only will they take their kids to great adventures, they will take their kids on great adventures. They'll go on vacations. They'll have a fantastic time. Amazing. I'm all for family time. But my friends, family time and educating your family and making sure that your light is completely pure from anything else, that is not the same thing. And if it is not thought out through beforehand, where are my moments? What does my Shabbat table look like? What conversation happens at the Shabbat table? What will I allow, so to speak, into that conversation? When my child is trying to formulate their opinions, to think about who they're going to marry. So many times people come at that point in the game and they're like, my daughter wants to go out with this guy. My son wants to go out with this girl. I don't know, Rabbi. It's not what I would have wanted. It's so far away from our family. I can't believe this person has no religion. Well, this person's not even Jewish. You know what I always say to the parents? Why are you coming to speak to me now? If your kid brought home someone who's not Jewish, The failure is not that they brought home someone who's not Jewish. If your kid brought home someone who has no religion, the failure is not in the fact that they brought that person home now. The failure is that the child was not taught or does not understand that this person is completely not correct for them. That this person can't be the partner for them in building a Jewish home. Now, if you made that a value in your child's life, I once suggested someone for a young woman who wanted to get married in our community. And she said, "Oh, who are you talking about?" I said, "Oh, it's actually, he was in shul that day." I said, "It's that person." She said no, based on what? He's not tall enough. Let me just be clear. Not he's not tall, he was tall. He's not tall enough. I just tried to imagine the moment where in her mind, the list was being made about what was important in our family. And how, how the mother said, "Listen, do anything, just make sure. Marry anyone. The primary thing is that he's tall enough." Now, you don't think you taught your child that, but you did. Either on purpose or by omission of replacing that value with something else. If you hammer home throughout the child's life that the most important thing in life is to be a mensch, then if they meet someone who's not a mensch, what do they think? Well, this guy doesn't have the most important thing. He's not a mensch. It won't even be a thought for them to want to go out with this person. Am I being clear? If in your home, honesty was so valued, and you know what? No, there was no sediment allowed into that. It's not like honesty is pretty important, but like if it's a lot of money, let's ask a shaila. There's not even a conversation. If your kids have that hammered into their mind, they meet someone who's not entirely truthful, they're running. That's what Shemen Zayit Zach means. Katit Lamaor. So my friends, there are a lot of people who will spend a lot of time picking out which dips go on their Shabbat table. Picking out exactly which meat they want to have as a roast. They'll spend tons of time preparing the Shabbat table. But did they spend 1 minute? 1 minute. A young mother came to me this week, or 2 weeks ago, and she said every Shabbat she prints off something from the internet. She finds a Dvar Torah that talks about the week's parasha, and finds one question to discuss with her kids at the table. You spent 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours preparing for Shabbat. Could you give 2 minutes to prepare the Shabbat table for it to be a Shabbat table, not just a dinner table? It's called Shabbat dinner. You spend so much time on the dinner. Could you spend a little time on the Shabbat to make it Shabbati, holy, spiritual? You're going to spend so much money on this vacation. Beautiful. You planned the hotel. You spent agonizing which hotel, which car to rent. Made sure that you had reservations in every restaurant. Did you bring any spirituality to that vacation? If this is your time with your children and they're off, they don't have tests to study for, and you're off, and you're disconnected from work because it's an off day in the office. Now's prime time. Did you choose anything to bring to that prime time? These are the questions we have to be asking ourselves when we talk about the light that we bring to the world. But my friends, I'll end with this. There's another kind of sediment that we're trying to make sure that a person doesn't bring to their light. How many times is a person's light How many times does do the lessons that you have to teach the world, do they come from a difficult place? Sometimes we learn lessons in a very, very hard way. And oftentimes, those hard-won lessons are the most important thing that we could communicate or share with other people. There is the purity of the light of what you've learned, but sometimes a little bit in the light of what you've learned is the bitterness of the cost it took on you to learn that lesson. The only way to get the oil is to squeeze the olive. But now that you have the oil, could you leave the olive pieces behind? You have people who are great people, but because they suffered to get there, they don't want to share their secret. You know how hard I had to work to be able to learn this, to be able to put myself here? If they want the oil, they've got to have the olive. Shemen zayit zach. You elevated yourself. You're in this beautiful place. Live with that light. Leave behind the cost that it cost you to be able to get it. The beautiful thing about candles, about light, is that when you share them, yours is not diminished. There's just more light. And I think that is part of what our pasuk is communicating to all of us. My friends, if you have the chance to shine for somebody else, you have to do so. Think about how you could shine for the people around you. Me'ata ve'ad olam. Baruch Adonai le'olam. Amen ve'amen.